The Himalayan yew takes 80 to 100 years to mature, and a poacher cuts it down in an hour. Drug companies stripped forests for a cancer compound called Taxol, and the poaching networks never shut down. So how did an endangered tree end up sold online as a natural cancer supplement? In this video, we break down how Himalayan yew gets protected on paper and poached in practice, and the checks you need before buying anything with yew extract on the label. Why would a tree that saves lives be closer to extinction than most endangered animals? Himalayan yew goes by a few names: Taxus wallichiana, Himalayan yew, West Himalayan yew. Depending on which country you stand in, the local name changes, but the tree stays the same. It grows slowly across high-altitude forests from Afghanistan through Nepal, northern India, Bhutan, and into southwestern China. The tree rarely exceeds 60 feet tall, with dark green needles, red berry-like fruits called arils, and a thin, reddish-brown bark that peels in strips. The species belongs to the genus Taxus, one of the oldest plant lineages on Earth. Yew trees have been around for over 200 million years, surviving ice ages, continental shifts, and mass extinction events that wiped out most other species. The Himalayan yew specifically occupies a narrow elevation band between 6,000 and 11,000 feet, growing in the understory of temperate and subalpine forests where cold, moisture, and shade keep the conditions right. And that narrow range is the first problem. A tree that only grows well in a specific altitude band across a specific mountain chain cannot bounce back the way a weed or a common hardwood can. Remove too many trees from that band, and the population collapses with no backup habitat to absorb the loss. The IUCN Red List classifies Taxus wallichiana as endangered. That puts it in the same threat category as snow leopards and red pandas. But while those animals get documentaries and donation campaigns, the Himalayan yew disappears quietly from forests that most people will never visit. So ask yourself, when a tree is endangered because a drug company needed its bark, and the drug made billions, who paid the cost of that success, and who is paying it right now? What is Taxol, and why did it change cancer treatment forever? The compound that put Himalayan yew on the map is paclitaxel, originally marketed under the brand name Taxol. It belongs to a class of chemicals called taxanes, and the way it kills cancer cells is unlike almost any other drug in oncology. Most chemotherapy drugs work by damaging DNA or blocking cell division at the genetic level. Paclitaxel takes a different approach. It locks onto structures called microtubules inside dividing cells and freezes them in place. Microtubules are the scaffolding that pulls chromosomes apart during division. When paclitaxel binds to them, the cell cannot complete division and eventually dies. That mechanism made paclitaxel effective against cancers that resisted other treatments. It became a frontline drug for ovarian cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, and several others. The FDA approved it in 1992 for ovarian cancer, and within a few years it was one of the best-selling cancer drugs in the world. But here is the part that triggered the ecological disaster. Early production of paclitaxel required harvesting bark from yew trees, and the yield was terrible. Producing a single dose of the drug required bark from multiple mature trees. Each tree takes decades to grow to harvestable size, and stripping the bark kills it. The math was brutal. Millions of cancer patients needed treatment. Each treatment needed dead trees, and the trees could not grow fast enough to replace what was taken. The Pacific yew in North America faced the same crisis first. Then pharmaceutical demand spread to the Himalayan yew, where the same compound existed in bark, needles, and twigs. Collectors in Nepal, India, and China began harvesting at a pace that the forests could not sustain. When a drug saves lives but the supply chain destroys an ancient species, who decides where the line sits? That question has never been fully answered, and the trees keep disappearing while the debate continues. How did poaching replace pharmaceutical harvesting and make things worse? The pharmaceutical industry eventually found alternatives to wild harvested bark. Semi-synthetic production methods using a precursor compound called 10-deacetylbaccatin-3, extracted from yew needles without killing the tree, reduced the need for destructive bark stripping. Cell culture and fermentation technologies now produce paclitaxel in laboratories. That should have solved the problem. It did not. By the time semi-synthetic production scaled up, a black market for Himalayan yew had already established itself. Poachers in Nepal and northern India discovered that the wood, bark and leaf material could be sold across borders for significant money. Some of it fed remaining demand for natural taxane extraction. Some went to traditional medicine markets in China and Southeast Asia, and some was simply sold as timber because yew wood is dense, fine-grained, and valued for carving and furniture. Reports from conservation groups describe organized smuggling operations moving Himalayan yew material across the Nepal-China border and through northern India. The trees are cut in remote, high-altitude forests where enforcement is thin, dried or processed locally, and transported to buyers who do not ask questions about sourcing. The economics make enforcement difficult. A poacher in a remote Nepali village can earn more from a single yew tree than from months of agricultural labor. The buyer pays a fraction of what the material is worth downstream, and the final product enters markets where nobody traces its origin. Here is the part that should bother you. The pharmaceutical industry moved on to lab production, but the poaching networks it helped create did not shut down. They just found new buyers, and the trees, which take 80 to 100 years to reach maturity, cannot replace themselves at the rate they are being cut. Who makes money when an endangered tree keeps showing up in products? The paclitaxel market generates billions in global revenue annually. Generic versions of the drug are manufactured across multiple countries, and the compound remains one of the most widely used chemotherapy agents in the world. The pharmaceutical supply chain has largely moved away from wild tree harvesting, but the money trail from the original demand left permanent marks on Himalayan yew populations. On the traditional medicine side, the economics look different, but the pressure stays the same. In parts of China, yew bark and needle preparations are sold as traditional remedies for various conditions. Some vendors market them as natural cancer treatments, borrowing the authority of paclitaxel's success without the controlled dosing, purity standards, or clinical oversight that make the pharmaceutical version effective. A bag of dried Himalayan yew material at a traditional market can sell for prices that make poaching worthwhile. The same material, repackaged and sold online as natural taxol or yew bark extract, can command premium prices from buyers looking for alternatives to conventional cancer treatment. That markup creates a dangerous incentive. The rarer the tree becomes, the more valuable the material gets, which motivates more poaching, which makes the tree rarer. Conservation biologists call this the rarity value spiral, and it has driven other species to extinction. So when you see yew bark extract sold online as a supplement, ask where it came from. If the answer is vague, the product may be feeding the same supply chain that is pushing this tree toward extinction. And if it claims to treat cancer, ask what clinical evidence supports that claim at the dose and purity in the bottle, because raw bark and pharmaceutical-grade paclitaxel are not the same thing. What does traditional medicine say about yew, and where does it collide with modern science? Himalayan yew has a long history in traditional medicine systems across Asia, predating the discovery of paclitaxel by centuries. In Tibetan medicine, yew preparations have been used for kidney disorders, fever reduction, and joint pain. Practitioners use specific parts of the tree in carefully measured formulas, and the preparation process matters because the raw plant contains toxic compounds beyond just taxanes. In Ayurvedic and folk medicine traditions across northern India and Nepal, yew bark and leaf decoctions appear in treatments for respiratory issues, digestive complaints, and as a general tonic. Some communities use small amounts of the berry flesh, which is the one part of the yew that is not toxic, while carefully avoiding the seed inside, which is deadly. And that toxicity is the critical detail most wellness sellers leave out. Nearly every part of the yew tree is poisonous to humans and livestock. The needles, the bark, the seeds, and the wood all contain taxine alkaloids that can cause cardiac arrest at relatively low doses. Livestock deaths from yew poisoning are well documented across Europe and Asia. Human traditional healers who used yew knew this and worked within extremely narrow dosage ranges using specific preparation methods designed to manage the toxicity. Modern supplement sellers who put yew bark in a capsule and ship it without those controls are not delivering traditional medicine. They are delivering a toxic plant material with a wellness label. So when someone sells you Himalayan yew extract as a health supplement, ask how they address the taxine alkaloid content. If the answer is silence or a vague reference to traditional use, you are trusting your cardiac system to a company that may not have tested for the compound that makes this tree lethal. What does conservation actually look like for a tree that everyone wants a piece of? Protecting Himalayan yew requires navigating a mess of competing interests across multiple countries with very different enforcement capabilities. Nepal banned the export of raw yew material and listed the species as protected under national law. India placed it under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, giving it the highest level of legal protection. Bhutan included it in protected species lists. China restricted harvesting in some provinces. On paper, the tree is well protected. In practice, enforcement in remote high-altitude forests is nearly impossible. The same terrain that makes Himalayan yew hard to farm also makes it hard to patrol. Conservation officers cannot monitor every ridge and valley across thousands of square kilometers of mountain forest, and poachers know which routes avoid checkpoints. Some conservation programs have tried a different approach. Community-based management projects in Nepal and India involve local villagers in monitoring and protection, giving them economic incentives to keep the trees standing rather than cut them down. Nursery programs grow seedlings for replanting, but the slow growth rate means planted trees will not reach maturity for decades. Researchers are also banking genetic material and studying propagation methods to ensure the species survives even if wild populations continue to decline. Seed banks and tissue culture collections exist, but they are a backup plan, not a solution. Here is the uncomfortable math. The tree takes 80 to 100 years to mature. A poacher can cut it down in an hour. A replanting program started today will not produce a harvestable tree until the next century. Every tree lost now creates a gap that no policy or program can close within a human lifetime. Do the conservation reports and the supplement labels describe the same tree? Pick up a conservation report and Himalayan yew shows up as a crisis. IUCN Red List. Endangered, population declining, illegal trade documented across multiple borders. The language treats the tree as a species fighting for survival. Now search Himalayan yew extract online and the language flips. Ancient healing tree. Natural cancer support. Traditional Tibetan remedy. Some sellers add sustainably sourced without explaining what that means for a tree that takes a century to replace. One market writes emergency reports about losing the species. The other charges you money for pieces of it. Here is the practical move. If you see Himalayan yew sold as a supplement, ask 3 questions. Where was it sourced and can the seller prove legal harvest? What testing was done for taxine alkaloid content, the compound that makes the tree toxic? And what clinical evidence supports the health claim at the dose in the bottle? If the answers are vague, you are not buying medicine. You are buying a piece of an endangered tree with a story attached to it, and the tree paid the price before the bottle reached your shelf. When it hits the wellness market, who actually benefits? People search natural Taxol and yew bark cancer online every day. The interest is real and it comes from a desperate place. Cancer patients and their families look for options, and the connection between yew trees and one of the most effective chemo drugs ever made is well known. But raw yew bark is not paclitaxel. The pharmaceutical version goes through extraction, purification, dosing calibration, and clinical testing before it reaches a patient. A capsule of ground yew bark from an online supplement store skips every one of those steps and adds a compound that can stop your heart. So who benefits? Pharmaceutical companies benefit from a drug that works and went through the process to prove it. Supplement sellers benefit from the association with that drug without doing any of the work. And the tree loses either way, whether the harvest is legal or not, because demand for the name alone keeps pressure on wild populations. One last detail. Paclitaxel is now produced semi-synthetically and through cell culture. The pharmaceutical industry no longer needs to cut down Himalayan yew trees to make the drug. The only people still cutting them are poachers feeding traditional medicine markets and supplement supply chains that trade on the tree's reputation. If you buy yew products, you are not supporting cancer research. You are supporting the supply chain that is finishing what the pharmaceutical industry started. If you want more breakdowns like this, where one tree can be an endangered species, in a conservation report and a natural cancer cure in a bottle on your screen, hit that subscribe button. I will keep bringing quick reality checks so you know what you are buying and what it actually cost before it reached you. We will see you in the next video.